So you're looking for a new video light, and perhaps you're looking at the Aperture 120D, or you're looking at the Godox or other cheap kind of single point light source lights. But maybe you should consider the Amaran 100x. Hello, my name is Jonathan Palfrey and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe as always. So here is what I think may be a really good option if you're looking for a new light purchase. I think it's an especially good option actually if it's an additional light to a kit that you already own. This is the Amaran 100x, and just to let you know, throughout this video I'm actually being lit by that light right now in front of me. This is the 100x going through the light dome, so it gives you a really good idea of sort of the power output you can get from the camera. It's quite a sort of middle overcast day here in the UK today, pretty standard weather, so the kind of lighting you can see in this room, this is what you can probably expect in most sort of interior environments. Say you're filming in an office or filming in someone's house. This is the kind of lighting that it can really kind of compare to, and how it sort of handles compared to the external window light. Now, just so you know, I'm not going to be going through any of sort of the tests where we measure the light against other lights and compare the brightnesses like that. I think there's other channels out there that can do that much better than I ever can. So I'm not even going to try and attempt to do any of that. Instead, I want to kind of just talk about who this light might be for. You can see through this video what it kind of looks like and the kind of quality that it provides, and maybe see like the functions that will be great and also the things that it's perhaps missing that could be frustrating for you as a purchaser. Now, these lights are ultra cheap, and that's what makes them special compared to the rest of the Aperture range. There is also the 200D and the 200X and also the 100D. Now, I went for the 100X. I would have gone for a 200X, but they are still out of stock, I think. They're really hard to find. But actually, this is a really good option, and it's nice and compact. It gives still enough punch and power for like an interview shot like this, or for a lot of scenarios, but it also gives you the flexibility of being a bi-color light. Being bi-color is really useful, and it may not be as trendy as sort of the RGB lights that are currently coming out at the moment, but to be honest, I'd rather have a bit more power than having ultimate color choice. That said, I think I'd still rather this over just going for a daylight only light nowadays. You know, that's the biggest frustration with the 120D, and that is it being a fixed daylight bulb in there. It's one of those things that when you're using the light on a regular basis, you really want the ability to kind of tweak the color easily. And yes, you can use gels, but it's just a pain to get it quite right, and it never, I think, matches the color of the room temperature. It's much easier when you can just dial it in on the back of the light, and that's where these lights are really handy. It's a very simple setup with these lights. You've got just the CCT on the back as well as the intensity to adjust the brightness. And that's as easy as it gets. There is a Bluetooth app you can use, and as with all these things, you know, that's great. You can use your phone and it functions really well. However, for me, I just think it's easier when you can just grab the dial on the back and adjust the brightness and the color temperature without having to fiddle around with Bluetooth settings. Now, one great thing, this light, because it's made of sort of plastic on the outside, is a lot lighter and a lot smaller than the 120Ds. Now, I know some people will say that's a negative. You don't want a light that's more likely to break than using sort of more robust lights. But to be honest, I think most owner-operators, that's not going to be a problem for. It may be a problem for people who are renting out their kit, and yes, then you probably should be going for the Aperture sort of light source series. But I think when you own your own lights, I think this is strong enough. It will do a good enough job, and actually the weight saving and the size saving for me is more important. You know, this is the complete light right here. You haven't got an external sort of box to control it. It will work by just plugging in the power cable in the back here, and you've got all your controls built in, which means it's a lot more compact. The only other thing that you have to worry about is the power pack, which is relatively small. It's just sort of standard laptop size. So it just has an XLR connection on the back, which is nice and secure and easy to attach to the light. It's got a fairly long cable, which is great and all very good. There is a negative here though. The power cable on the end here is actually really short. I don't know why they made such a short one. It locks in place, which is nice, but the actual length is a bit too short for my liking. I'd like to see something that, you know, you can go much further. They're cheap sort of standard cables. You can buy them anywhere, and I would just go out and buy a 3-meter one because it's easier than dealing with reels, to be honest, and you always know then you've got probably enough distance on the cable. Now, as I mentioned, I think we're at a point now with lights, with all of these lights, at all the different price brackets, where the actual quality, I think for most people, is excellent. I don't think you need to worry about, whether they do the right color temperature accurately and all that, because they all do. They all do good enough, daylight, tungsten, and everything in between. The options and the intensities, flicker, all those kind of things aren't any more concerns. Unlike the old days where cheap LED lights were bad and you had to go for really good ones to get anything of good quality. Now I'm not too worried about any of that. I think you can go for any of the light options out there and you're going to have a decent enough lighting for your videos, especially if you're just doing something where it's on YouTube or even small corporate work where, to be honest, people aren't going to really notice the slight differences in shades of colours. It's very different perhaps if you're working on a big film set, but at that point I'd hope you'd have the budget for much more impressive lighting setups with all the proper crew to make sure it all looks good. That's where I think these lights are really a great option. These are light, small, and really convenient and really cheap. I would probably prefer buying a couple of these, or 3 or 4 of these even, I think, probably for the price of a 120D. I think they're just so much more versatile and you'll get so much more use out of them. It's nice little things like having the umbrella attachment on the front here, just to make it easy so you don't have to always use a big softbox with your lighting. Now, the one big negative I think with these lights isn't things like the build quality, isn't the output or anything like that. It's its inability to run off battery easily. It's because they are 48 volt lights. Now, I'm not sure what the reasoning behind that, the technical reasoning behind using 48 volts versus sort of, I think, 24 volts, which is on the other lights. Why they've chosen to go down the 48 volt route, I'm not too sure. But what it means is basically these lights can't run off a battery easily unless they've got a inverter pack, basically, which Aperture have released. Now, this is an okay option, I guess, but it looks quite big. I haven't seen one in person, so maybe it's not as bad as it looks, but it does look like we're going kind of back to the Aperture 120 in terms of having the external battery pack. And it's a shame that they couldn't have thought of a neater solution. That's where I think the Aperture 60X comes in. Now, I did a whole another video on the Aperture 60X, and obviously in that video I did explain how much I absolutely loved that light and how versatile of a light it was. And one of the best features about that light was the way they've integrated the battery solution. It's literally built onto the edge of the light is a V-lock mount. So you just put your V-lock battery onto the side there and then be able to plug it in straight from there using the D-tap connection. And there you go. You've got now a portable light solution that's bi-color and is probably in a very similar range in terms of brightness as this Amaran 100x. It is actually a lot heavier light because it's fully metal and it's got the big lens inside, and it's also a lot more expensive as well to purchase. So that's two obviously big factors when it comes to purchasing the light and whether it's better or worse than the Amaran 100x. I think if you just had to have one light, I'd probably go with the 60X. I think it's a more versatile light. I think you can use it for more different purposes. I think having it 100% battery operated without needing a separate external pack that you have to put on the floor and carry with you, I think is definitely worth it. And actually when you're doing a lot of corporate work and you're running around, often you're not allowed to plug into walls and things like that. And that's where I think it just makes more sense as a light in those scenarios. That said, if you know you can plug into a wall without a problem, this is a much cheaper and just as good solution for doing, say, interview lighting like this. Certainly if you're running a YouTube channel, this is a very good option to go for. Or if you've got somewhere you've got semi-permanent setup, this is a brilliant option. We used it recently on a corporate interview where we could plug in and it was no problem whatsoever, and it provided really nice soft light in a really small convenient package, which I think is hard to achieve from any other light out there in a similar price bracket. So overall, would I go for this over the 120D? Yes, without a doubt. I think although you're losing the battery option, although it may not be quite as powerful as a 120D, I think the flexibility of having bi-color, and I think the lightness of the body design, and I think how much more compact it is, are all worthwhile advantages over the 120D. Now when compared to the 60X, that's a harder choice, and I probably would prefer the 60X if I only had to have one light over these 100Xs, just purely for that battery solution. I think that just makes life a little bit easier when you're running and gunning. That said, if you can have both, I'd definitely be looking at picking up a 100x and a 60x. And what's the beauty of these 100x's is they are so cheap. So if you're doing, say, a multi-cam shoot, you could buy several of these for a fraction of the price that you'd be spending on, say, 300D. In fact, that brings up a whole other video that I'll probably be doing in the future, where we purchased a 600D for our big resort shoots where we need to light up big spaces. But actually, I've got to say, after using it, I'd maybe tempted to get some of these 200Ds or 200Xs instead, because I think actually, you know what? With a few of those, they'll be lighter and more versatile than one big 600D. But that'll be an interesting video for another day, which I'll be sharing with you and discussing, and it'd be interesting what your thoughts are on that as well. So will you be picking up one of these lights? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. As always, please like and subscribe because it massively helps out my YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.